All right, welcome again to our October 19th, 2023 regular meeting of the Marysville Board of Education. We previously called the meeting to order, had an executive session, and so we're now to the Pledge of Allegiance in our agenda. So if everybody would stand up and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I would now accept a motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Smith.
Second.
Second by Ms. Savage. Roll call.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
Mr. Vine?
Yes, motion carries. And now we are going to have some nice recognition here. I think we have a couple of our administrators are going to help with this presentation. Yep, Ms. Hinder and Ms. Morgan.
How about now? Okay, good evening. My name is Katie Morgan and I serve as assistant principal at Marysville High School. Tonight I am afforded the opportunity to recognize 3 Marysville High School and early college high school students who are commended National Merit Scholars. The National Merit Scholarship Corporation recognizes and honors academically talented students in the United States. High school students enter the National Merit Scholarship Program by taking the PSAT in October of their junior year. Approximately 1.3 million juniors take the exam. Of those students, roughly 34,000 students are designated as commended students based on their score. These students receive a letter of commendation. Approximately 16,000 high scorers, representing less than 1% of the nation's high school graduating seniors, qualify as semifinalists. Only semifinalists will have an opportunity to advance in the competition by filling out an application, taking the SAT exam, and completing some other program requirements. Finalists can qualify for scholarships ranging from a one-time $2,500 award to a $10,000 annually renewable award when combining national merit, corporate-sponsored scholarships, and college-sponsored scholarships. It is my privilege to congratulate and recognize Dalton Kane, Shannon N. Cordell, and Kiernan E. Rosenkopf as National Merit Scholar commended students for Marysville High School and Early College High School. Their hard work and dedication to academic excellence will no doubt serve them well in any and all of their future endeavors. Congratulations to Dalton, Shannon, and Kiernan. If you want to come up, those that are in attendance tonight.
Hello, I am Jennifer Hinderer and I serve as the principal at Marysville Early College High School. So students at Marysville Early College High School earned academic honors from the College Board National Recognition Programs. These programs celebrate students' hard work in high school and showcase their strong academic performance. the academic honors for students from a rural area or small town, and for Black, Indigenous, and/or Latino students are an opportunity for students to share their strong academic achievements with college and scholarship programs that are seeking to recruit diverse students. Sorry. The criteria for eligibility include a GPA of 3.5 or higher and PSAT scores that are within the top 10% of assessment takers in each state for each award program. I am proud to recognize 4 students from Marysville STEM Early College High School that achieved these honors. If you could come up when you hear your name. Alexi Fernandez Busto for the National Rural and Small Town Award. Briar Ross for the National Rural and Small Town Award. Chris Dickinson for the National Rural and Small Town Award, and Clariana Thomas for the National African American Recognition Award. We're thrilled to celebrate our students and recognize them for the great work they've been doing. We're proud of their strong academic performance in the classroom, their performance on the PSAT, and for all that they do in our building and in the community. Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda, I would accept a motion to approve Sherry Mabey as our Employee of the Month. Do I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Ferguson, second by Mr. Keck. Now I'll turn it over to Ms. Allen.
Well, Sherry, I'm going to make you come up here and stand with the board so that you can just be embarrassed in front of everyone, right? Stand right up there. All right, it's my pleasure, Sherry, to read the comments that your peers have said about you and the reasons they've nominated you for this recognition. Sherry helps to keep the school running smoothly. She is kind and caring and helps to keep us all organized. Sherry goes above and beyond her regular duties. She organizes our social committee and helps to plan events that benefit our students, staff, and community. Sherry is the best secretary I've ever worked with. She knows the answer to any question, and if she's unsure about the answer, she will find it. She is so supportive and always there to help anyone. Our school would not run like it does if it were not for Sherry. Congratulations.
So now to make it official, we will do the roll call.
Mr. Ferguson? Yes. Mr. Keck? Yes. Ms. Savage? Yes. Mr. Smith? Yes. Ms. Devine?
Yes, motion carries. It's official. All right. Is there any public participation this evening? None? All right. Then we're going to move on to our presentation. We have a presentation tonight from Ms. Kim Jude. Welcome. About our student services.
Hi, everyone. So I thought I would do a presentation on special education in Marysville, but I wasn't sure everyone's knowledge base. So we're starting far out and we'll zoom in towards the end. Sound good? Okay, so first off, what is special education? That's how zoomed out we're going to start. And that is specially designed instruction. So a student has a need to have an individualized program to help them advance in their education. So there are 13 areas of eligibility under Ohio law. On the next few slides, I will have them all outlined, but I'm not going to read the definitions. The definitions are on there. I'll just highlight a little bit in there. So autism is kind of self-explanatory. Deaf blindness is not necessarily that you're completely deaf and completely blind. It means that you have a hearing impairment and a subsequent visual impairment, and so a dual sensory loss. That is also the only category that trumps all other categories. So if you have a dual sensory impairment in those areas, you have to be categorized in that one. Often students may qualify in various categories, and the team has to come to a decision on which one's the most impacting factor. Developmental delay has also changed in the last 12 months. That used to be only a preschool category, but now the state has allowed it to go through the age of 9, so right before your 10th birthday. So that helps that we don't have to quickly do a reeval for a 5-year-old to determine if they qualify or not at a school age. So that is handy. Emotional disturbance, that is a student has to have a behavior to a marked degree, a long period of time, a marked degree, that is impairing their education. And that is not always an outward behavior, that's also an inward behavior. So that's often forgotten, but that includes that. Hearing impairment is self-explanatory. Intellectual disability is when someone has a cognitive impairment that really needs much more support in school than just a general ed setting. Multiple disabilities, this again is self-explanatory. You qualify in lots of areas: speech, physical therapy, occupational therapy, audiology, things like that. However, again, deaf blindness, if you have both of those, a dual sensory loss, then you would be categorized as deaf blind. Orthopedic handicap is more physical needs. Other health impairment is actually divided into two different. So you have other health impaired minor and other health impaired major. Minor is more like ADHD, seizure disorder, things like that. Major is typically very medically involved, so have a port, things like that. A specific learning disability is for a student who has average cognition but has an area that they need to learn differently, right? So written expression, reading fluency, math calculation, things like that. Speech and language impairment is often confused that it's just articulation, so a student that can't say maybe their THs or their Rs, but it also includes students who have a language impairment or a social pragmatic impairment. Traumatic brain injury is self-explanatory, so that's an injury to the brain that's impacting their education, and then visual impairment is also self-explanatory. So what do the percentages look like for students in Marysville? What I did here is I took this from our special education profile, which you can find attached to our report card on the website, on ODE's website. So Marysville in 2020, it's Marysville, the top line, the second line is the average in the state of Ohio, and the third line is the difference between the two. So in 2020, we were about 6.64% over. In last year, we're now 1.2%, 29% over. Still pretty close to the state average, but we are over slightly. So what does that boil down to in Marysville? So here I put it in by disabling category. What you need to know is anything that says not reportable is that the percentage was so small that it would be personally identifiable, so I didn't list that there, or the state didn't list the state one. So the ones that I'd like to highlight, we're off by like maybe 1% or a little over 1%. That's really not alarming to me. It's the ones that are significantly different. So one is emotional disturbance. Our number is lower than the state of Ohio. The next one I'd like to point out is our Intellectual disability is also lower than the state of Ohio by, a little over 3%. The one that's significantly higher is other health impaired, and in our case, it wouldn't be other health impaired major, it would be other health impaired minor. So we're about 9% over. And then specific learning disability for us is down 5%. So that is a unique. So whether, our teams are deciding the other health impaired minor is the more impacting factor, and maybe other districts are saying that their intellectual disability or something is more impacting. We're not really sure. So our psychologist department is really looking into that this year and probably in future years. The other one I'd really like to point out is speech. So in 2020, we had 17%. Again, the state average didn't change much then, so we were about 5% over. And now we're down to a closer percentage, and that's because we really improved our MTSS process in speech about the year of 2020. So this slide explains who we're responsible for. Oftentimes, parents, staff think that we're only responsible for students that attend our brick and mortar buildings here in Marysville. We're actually required to educate students with disabilities between ages 3 and the day before they turn 22. So that's preschool, and then students that defer their education. And then any student who is named Marysville as a residential district. So that would be a student who is open enrolled in another district. And so currently I'm working with 8 other school districts in which we have students on IEPs that are enrolled. Students who are foster placed into other districts, but the courts have named us as the residential district. And I'm currently working with 19 other school districts in that. We're responsible for students who are in correctional facilities and students who are in medical facilities. So medical facilities are easy to point out, such as Children's Hospital. If a student is receiving chemotherapy at Children's Hospital, I work with Columbus Public to make sure that their teacher is working with our student while they're in getting treatment. We're also responsible for providing the ETR and IEP for students who are using the John Peterson and/or Autism Scholarship. And that law has changed as of October 3rd that includes students who don't qualify for an IEP necessarily, but perhaps have a medical or a clinical, excuse my misterminology there, clinical diagnosis of autism. And then we're also responsible for students who are in non-public schools. So the students at Trinity who may qualify for services, we're responsible for making sure our ADA B funds are being used to serve those students. So what are specially designed services? Services in Marysville range, so special ed transportation, which I'm sure everyone knows about by now, is part of a service. Also speech and language pathology. Audiology, that's for students who use audio equipment to hear, so hearing impaired, sorry for my miswords there. Interpreting services, so if a student is deaf and they participate in sports, we would provide the interpreter on the sidelines or at practices. Psychology services, physical therapy, counseling services, extended school year, so that's if students can't maintain their knowledge over long periods of time that we're not in school, we would provide those services. Orientation and mobility, that's one that people typically don't know, and that's for students who are visually impaired and need to orient in new buildings or new locations, or need to learn how to cross the sidewalk, cross the street, cross sidewalks, things like that. Braille instruction, and then medical services. And the next slide here, I have all of that broken down by staff, how many we've staffed over time in this area. The one thing I want to point out for nursing is this is not covering our clinic staff. This is just nursing services that are required as specially designed instruction for a student. So obviously we have more nursing staff in the district than what's on this slide. So we have the things that are ESC, those are ones that we contract with various ESCs, not always just Central Ohio ESC, but they come, we just don't have enough staff to cover it all. And the rain is getting harder, so if you can't hear me, I'm sorry. The ones that have increased, intervention specialists since 2020 to now we're at 75 compared to 66. You do have to remember that we did have to expand our preschool program. So that includes, some of these include that staff that we've needed to add to that. Our nursing services have gone up by a half of a staff member. Occupational therapy has almost doubled since 2020, and we're using every bit of that 5.8 staff member. Psychological services we've increased, and our special ed transportation has decreased, but that special education staff includes drivers, aides. It's not just drivers. This slide Mark has shared with you in the past, so I won't get into it too much, but it just shows how our specialized therapeutic services have increased over the last 6 years, specifically when related to our OT, PT, and speech. We didn't include audiology, orientation, mobility, things like that. So what is that financial impact to the district? Thanks to Todd, I was able to get these numbers more accurate, so thank you, Todd. Using state, federal funds, you can see that the difference between 2019 and last school year is roughly $3 million. It's difference. So every time we need to add staff for services, obviously that increases. With that comes increased state and federal funding, but obviously not as impactful as may be needed. The one thing I do want to share is we are required to provide a surrogate parent. So if a student is in permanent custody of the state, we cannot have a foster parent or child and family services sign any documents that are related to special education because they are not considered a surrogate parent. So surrogate parents are volunteers, they're not paid. They are required to take a training and submit a certificate to me, and then they're put on a roster for DEW, and they then can serve as the role of the parent, so they can help make educational decisions within special education. Currently we have 3. We would love to have more, so if you know of anybody that wants to do it, they cannot work for the district and they cannot work for Child Protective Services. It's a 10-hour training. It's lovely. I've done it myself. So if you know anyone that's interested, let them know. And that's it. What questions do you have for me?
First, I want to thank you. And then since you were just talking about that surrogate parent training, do you have any idea generally how much of a time commitment that is?
Oh, that's a good question. It depends on the student. So if a student just has a typical evaluation team report, that happens every 3 years. So that meeting lasts anywhere from an hour to 2. But they do have an annual IEP meeting. So that happens every year for about an hour. And then depending on the surrogate parent, it's nice if they get to know the student and things like that. So if they have that time, they can choose that time. So the time commitment, 4 or 5 hours, and then anytime they want to spend looking at students' records or meeting the student to make a knowledgeable decision.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a whole bunch, so, okay.
I'm ready.
All right. How often are students evaluated in the district?
Do you mean initial? So there's 2 different types of evaluations. There's an initial evaluation and there's a reevaluation. So if they're reevaluated, that happens every 3 years. If you're asking how many students, we have roughly 1,100 students on IEPs ages 3 to 22 in the district. And so I don't know if I can give you an exact number, but.
No.
Okay.
So what type of testing does the district do to identify special education needs?
Oh, great question. So it depends on what disabling condition we're considering, but it can include an IQ test or a cognitive test, academic testing in all the areas, a speech and language test that includes articulation, language, and social pragmatic, physical therapy, occupational therapy, an adapted physical education assessment. So if a student can't participate in PE to the level of their peers, then there would be that consideration. Audiology, visual impairments, their Braille assessment if they have a visual impairment that requires Braille instruction. So they'll do an assessment in Braille to see how they read so that the reading fluency piece can be addressed. We take into consideration outside evaluation team reports. So if a children's hospital provides a report or a private psychologist, it doesn't end. There's a long, long list.
So if we must service students in the district from age 3 to 22.
Correct.
So at the top end of that, from 18 to 22, how does the district provide services?
That's a fantastic question. Most students tend to graduate, so it's a very small number of students that will defer graduation and continue on. Some options are, they just haven't met the requirements, so they can't graduate, and so we would continue servicing them in the way that they are currently receiving instruction, and help get that credit recovery, as well as providing the specially designed instruction outlined in their IEP. Then there's also the option of I've met my requirements, but perhaps I'm not ready for the workforce. And so some students will go to defer their high school diploma and go to High Point and receive special education services at High Point, as well as earning their certificates for whatever pathway they choose. Another option is for our students that are more impacted by their education. We have a program called the CAPS program at the high school that is run by Josh Montgomery, and those students work on life skills and job skills. So they will go out into the community. They have a coffee shop at the high school, so if you haven't been there, you should stop by and get some coffee. But they go out into the community and work practice jobs, and a lot of them are getting jobs from that. So they can work at Goodwill, they've worked at the YMCA, they've worked at UCO. There's a couple of factories or industries that I can't say their names, but those as well. And so it's been a really amazing program for them. So they spend about a half a day at the high school and a half a day at job trials. Obviously, it depends on the schedule of the private companies. So sometimes, that's not an exact even swap. And then there is one other option, or a couple of other options. If our students are attending the school for the deaf, they have a transitions program as well. So students could stay at OSD and participate in their transitions program. And there's also a program that is run from the ESC of Central Ohio at Ohio State and Columbus State. And we have had some students go through that program. So it's a high school program, but it's held on a college campus.
Gotcha, got you. And my final question is, can you explain some of the largest challenges for special education in our district?
I think one of the easiest ones to discuss are outward behaviors and inward behaviors. Sometimes having those behaviors and making sure that they're getting all of the supports and all of the services we need and tying them to community sports can be challenging. Doesn't mean we don't do a great job of overcoming them or helping the student overcome them, but it is always initially a very big challenge for our staff, for the students, for ourselves. And I think additionally is, trying to figure out how to word this, is finding ways to serve students in unique ways and still getting them into their least restrictive environment. Preschool would be an example, right? Harold Lewis is considered a separate facility, but they've been very beneficial and wonderful to work with all of these years, but they get full, and really we should be providing services itinerantly, so we are, and they were for us before, but they ran out of staff just like everyone does. So getting students serviced in all of their placements. So itinerantly means if a student's attending Trinity for preschool, we would provide the services at Trinity in their least restrictive environment, which is their gen ed setting, and then also providing them in our preschool classes. So that preschool is the example I use, but it's that same model, kindergarten through 12th grade as well. So just making sure that students are able to be with their peers and also get the services they need, and sometimes that's a delicate balance.
Excellent, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You and I had a conversation over the summer, and I went to Washington and I carried your message and your examples to our congressional elected officials, and also for other departments in our school district. And in the conversation that I had with you, one of the things that just has stuck with me is the fact that we have 1,100 kids and I think all of them have an IEP, is that right?
Correct.
And I think you mentioned earlier, each IEP takes about an hour. And so I know one of the challenges that you and people that work in your department and work in student services is just the volume of paperwork and documentation and so forth that you have to do. And I was astounded. I don't know how you and the others get it all done, but I know it's happening.
Would you like me to share what that is with the group?
Yes.
So the individuals that work in special education are required to be a part of the evaluation team. So they have to do all of the testing and writing all of the paperwork for that. They're required to write the individualized education program document that goes along with that if a student would qualify. If a student doesn't qualify, they still have to write the evaluation, right? Then they have to write the plan or program for the student that does qualify. They also have to do progress as frequently as determined by the IEP team, so that just is variant. Also, they have to track all of the data as they work with the student, right? Don't forget their lesson plans and things like that, like every other teacher. And additionally, they have to track all of the time that they work with students. And then our therapist also, we use, this is a benefit to the district, we use the school Medicaid program, and that is a wonderful program that we get to be tied with, but it also comes with its own amount of paperwork. So our staff does have to bill Medicaid for every single minute that they work with students. Did I capture what we talked about this summer?
You did. And, my thanks to everybody for, digging in and putting in the time and the effort. I would point out that the federal government, when Individuals with Disabilities Education Act was passed, said that they would pay 40% of the additional cost, and the federal government today is paying about 13%.
Correct.
And has never, since the law was passed and the requirements put in place, they've never provided more than 17% funding. And so that was part of the message that I took. I used your words in the halls of Congress this summer, so thank you very much.
And thank you for doing that. Hopefully we'll see changes.
So I don't know if this question's appropriate or not, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
I'm ready.
But I just assume that private schools don't have to take these students, and we do.
Correct.
And so we front the bill on that.
Correct.
Which is sizable, as
As a few slides ago shared.
So.
Yes, and also, but there is a law called Child Fine Law that requires us to essentially, as it's worded, find children who may need services. So if they are in the private setting, we, as the district, are required to evaluate in that private setting. And then in those cases, we would, if they would qualify, so let's say, I'm going to use a different one because I keep picking on Trinity. How about Christian Academy? If they qualify at Christian Academy, we would then offer them a free and appropriate public education, so FAPE, via an individualized education program or an IEP. But they would have to then receive those services in our district, if that makes sense. So we have to do the evaluation because of Child Fine Law, but we don't have to service in certain locations.
That's fantastic, because I thought there for a minute you were going to tell me we had to provide those services in that school district to boot.
Yeah, only the private non-pubs that accept IDEA-B funds do we have to help them get services, but they do get a proportion of our IDEA-B funds to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you for your presentation tonight. I do have a few questions. Can you speak to the relationship between the district and the Union County Board of Developmental Disabilities as to how do we serve our students, and maybe from the 3-year-old what's the relationship like getting them into the school district?
That is a interesting question because, like I mentioned earlier, Harold Lewis Center is a part of our preschool gamut of services, and that is owned by the Union County Board of Developmental Disabilities. So that's step one. We have a great relationship with them. We meet a lot, actually, to help make our preschool services go well. And also, one of our preschool school psychologists meets with the early intervention team that services the students birth to 3. So if you didn't know, the state has to, or the county has to provide services for students with disabilities, or not students, children, birth to 3, and then it transitions to us. So our school psychologist works with the county board on that piece. Additionally, the county board has service providers that students or adults or children can qualify for, and those service consultants then kind of help parents navigate more than just the school district. They help them navigate privately, so doctors, appointments, things like that. But we really welcome them. They have a really great relationship with us. They can come. So sometimes parents want to observe their children, but at least my kids would act different if I was standing there. I don't know about yours. So they'll come and do observations for the parent and kind of let the parent know what's going on. They'll come to IEP meetings and help advocate for the student and help the district understand what the parent's seeing at home. So they're really a great liaison there. As we move into the older ages, we're required at the age of 14 and over for a student with disability, have a transition plan as part of their programming. And at 14, 15, 16, students are still not quite sure. So it's more exploratory at that point. But as they get older, they will help us get access to outside things for work experience. They'll have work experiences in the summer. They'll help connect students with, as we do, but they have a better relationship with Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities, or also known as OOD. So they'll work with that. So we have a great relationship. It's kind of parallel, if that makes sense, except for at the preschool age where we're kind of all working together.
Thank you. So we have like preschool students. That's kind of easy to understand the experience coming into the district. What is the experience like for a student say in middle school who's identified? What's the identification process like to be placed on an IEP?
That's a great question. So it can happen in multiple ways. I know that Mark has presented in the past about our multi-tiered systems of support. So we have all of those checks and balances throughout the year, progress monitoring, and if the educational team determines that a student really might need to be evaluated, it might be more than what we're providing at a tier 2, tier 1 level, typically tier 2, then we would go through and do an evaluation process. So that's the educational way. Also, there are some times that parents are just having some concern. So an easy one is a traumatic brain injury, right? A student receives multiple concussions, and now it's really starting to impact their education, or maybe they've started to have seizures in their sleep, things like that. Parents will request testing to see if they really need special ed services. TBI is not the only one, it's just the easiest one to explain.
Understood. Let's, I guess, workload, because we've referenced earlier that the time spent, and I've seen it personally firsthand, on the IEP process, the assessments. How's the workload right now for our staff? Even just, intervention specialists. I have a elementary daughter, and I know there's a lot of extra additional communication with parents, which is great, but what's the workload like for those staff, and is it, which way is it trending to be I guess?
It's higher. I think I know what you're trying to ask. I have fantastic staff. We're so blessed with the staff we have in this district. Hands down, I would argue the best, no offense to any other district. But they are firing on all cylinders, if for lack of a better reference. They're working hard. They're at max capacity. When we need, when we're there, I always speak to Diane, who speaks to you about, okay, we're there. We need to add something somewhere, whether that's a program or a service or a person. But yeah, there's no one that has a light load. How about that?
Understood. Yes. Thank you. For the IEP, it's a legal document. What are the resources for parents? Because I will say that it's kind of an
It is intimidating.
intimidating from a parent perspective. I'm sure it is for on your
Right.
side. What are the services to make sure parents are understand what the document is and the services and how to conduct themselves, or not conduct themselves, but the whole IEP meeting process and evaluation? Yes.
So there are state resources. So at every meeting or beginning of a meeting, there's something called the Parents' Rights book or the procedural safeguards. Those are offered at every meeting. We typically now send them on an email link because everyone is digital, and we have those in every single language. So that is a basics for parents. Also, that has references in there to websites that would help. In the district, hopefully I'm approachable enough that people ask me questions, but for the most part, our psychologists are those initial contacts, and they try to do just a one-on-one phone call or in-person meeting just to talk about, this is the process, this is what we're going to do, do you have any questions? Does that answer your question?
I think so.
Okay.
But the parents are fully engaged and a full partner if they want to be
right.
in the process. And then just a funding question. I know we have the state and local. Federal is going to be hard to change, but what can we do are we meeting the needs with our funding system right now? And if not, do we need to go to our state legislators and ask for more money, or how do we make up the difference there?
I'll let Todd answer that, but
Okay.
I will say
That's my last question. Thank
we're
you.
using grants and Medicaid. We're using every system that we can that's extra. Our department is trying. How about that? But you can answer the rest of that question.
Well, you might not like my answer, but I don't think we're going to be, we see slight increases on the federal side. This year on the state side, we saw a significant increase, as you'll see when we talk about the 5-year forecast. I mean, the state ponied up and gave us a lot more money. And I've said many times before, we have the 12th lowest local effort in the state of Ohio out of 611 schools. What that means is that money's going to have to come locally.
Lots of good questions. Great presentation. Kim, we cannot thank you enough for what you and your staff do. Like you said, I truly believe our community and our district is so blessed. You guys go above and beyond, and you care for our kids, and we can't thank you enough.
Yeah, we have amazing staff. That's not a question. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
All right. Tonight we have Mr. Cox with us here for our Ohio High Point report. Good evening.
Okay, so I'll start with my unscripted moment comment of the month. So I've had personal experience with Kim and her crew, and they are amazing. Their ability to work with all of these kids and to truly change their lives I've personally experienced, and is incredible. I would also tell you from the beginning, when you have your first conversation through the whole process, they take something that's scary and sometimes really sad and heartbreaking, and they make it understandable, and they help you understand that they can make the world better for your child. So cannot say enough about Kim and her crew. They're amazing. So, okay, we'll talk about High Point now. Okay, so I've got a few things tonight. We'll make it fast as usual. So first of all, this is really cool. So IT and media arts, I don't know if you all had a chance to read my report, but Ellie Palermo was elected as the BPA regional historian, and that is the first regional office holder we've had since 2017, so big deal for her. She deserves a lot of congratulations, so that's really cool. Performing arts, so if you've not got your tickets to Death by Dessert yet, I'm sorry, you're out of luck, they're sold out. 3 performances, but it's going to be really awesome. Mr. Ahern and his crew do an incredible job, and so it's going to be an interactive play, so if you are going, you get served dinner, so it's going to be really cool, so very excited about that. School stores at Bunsold and MHS are stocked and open for business. Students are learning to stock items, make sales, and provide customer service, which is cool. Our ECH engineering and manufacturing students were able to recently attend Honda Manufacturing Day at the East Liberty plant, where I'm sure there was a lot of great learning. The last thing I want to talk about, I sent you all the 5-year forecast. We actually had a meeting last night, and we got to go through the 5-year forecast, and there was just a couple things that I was really struck by. you know, when you live here, right, we think of growth, growth, growth. All of our challenges, all of the things we're talking about are more students, right, and how we're constantly growing and how to manage that. It was highlighted for me last night that while we're growing, every other district that High Point serves is shrinking. So we're the only ones that are growing. So personally, I think we should celebrate that and be pretty excited about it. So that's one, but two, you know, when we've had some conversations about capacity issues at High Point, well, currently today, if you look at the total student population that High Point can serve, Marysville represents 24% of those students. That's going to increase over the next 5 years to about 26.5% of those students. So we're going to continue to increase, but I think the great news for Marysville students is that there will be capacity for them. So even as our district grows, as those other districts do tend to lose students, it will open up opportunities for Marysville kids. So that's the silver lining within that. Let's see, growth. Oh yes, aviation. I wanted to talk about that real quick. So they are looking to add aviation at a remote campus in 2025, 2026. No pressure here, but boy, wouldn't that be cool if that was at Marysville? Just throwing that out there to y'all. It will require a really good aviation instructor. So if you know somebody that might be qualified for that, I think that would be an amazing program to bring to Marysville. So just my sales pitch to you all tonight. The last thing is, too, with Intel coming to the area, as we know, everybody's talking about that. There is in the long-term forecast a plan within the IT discipline at ECHS to add a program specific to the IT needs of Intel. So for those kids for the future, so for kids that we want to stay here in Central Ohio and maybe ultimately have a career there is going to be a path specific for those kids, and that is in the planning stages. So that's what I've got for you all tonight. I sent you the supporting documentation today, including the 5-year forecast, so feel free to read through that and hit me with any questions, and if I can answer any questions tonight, I'll do it.
Any questions? Okay, no, great information.
Wow, let me off easy. You guys are
I know,
awesome.
left you off the hook.
You guys are amazing.
I was going to say, I was a little surprised that 5-year forecast. I didn't see too many like numbers on there, you know? Like, so that
Oh, well,
my
I can
only
send
question.
you that too. I've got that. Todd would probably like to see it. I don't know if you guys would like to. But I could send you the numbers.
Oh, that's okay. That's
Okay,
great.
fair enough.
No, thanks so much. This
All
is
right.
great information.
Thank you,
Appreciate
folks.
it. All right, next up, our superintendent's report. Ms. Allen.
All right, before I move down a couple items, I just want to give a shout out specifically to our entire IT department. I know Aaron and James are kind of behind the wall back there, but Christian, Tommy, Ryan for getting our space ready for this evening. There are still a few things sound panels that need to go up, but really they've done a lot of work this week to get ready for tonight. So I just want to make sure I thanked all of you, let you know how much we appreciate this space. I'd like to start with Ryan Walker, or Ryan and Todd and Jonathan, I think, are going to kind of give you an overview and update on transportation. They're also going to share with you the proposed bell schedule. You have an agenda item later in the board section, and that is to approve a change in instructional time as opposed to necessarily approving the bell schedule, which is required. So as you know, the past couple of days have been challenging with transportation. We put an announcement out last night that we were going to expect several late buses. High school buses ran about an hour and a half behind. Creekview and Bunzel was closer to 2 hours behind, and the elementary ran about, let's say, 30 to 40 minutes behind, so not quite as bad as we expected. I'll reiterate what we've said the past several meetings. We're gonna recommend some shifts, but really the solution to our problem is manpower. One of two things has to change: ridership, which can't change, or who's driving them, right? That's really where we are. Unfortunately, there have been several things, and you're gonna hear those. I don't wanna steal your thunder, sorry, I'm probably jumping into it. But that's really the pressure that we're under. Either we need some people to get on board or to come back from their leaves in order to help it's a human capacity issue that we have right now.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a whole lot more to say. Thanks, Ann. We'll pack it up then. Yeah, first of all, welcome everyone to the 212 Chestnut Street Boardroom. We got it. I didn't feel any or hear any rain inside the building tonight, so that's a win. And we got a little ways to go, but hopefully this will work out for everyone. So, yeah, we're here again to talk about transportation. We have spent quite a bit of time over the last, I guess, almost a month at this point with TPS Consulting, with our transportation team. Special guest tonight, Todd Amos is here. Also our routing coordinator, Melissa Ray, is here. We could talk forever about the magic that they spend just to get to school every day. I mean, it's remarkable. And the drivers we have showing up just every day. I mean, you just put more weight on them and they keep carrying it. I mean, it's pretty remarkable. That team, especially the last few days, has really shown up for us, literally. But what we have been working on is a proposed change to the daily schedule. As you can see, working with TPS, working with our transportation team, what we settled on was a bit of a compromise from what you had seen previously. So the changes here are not quite as dramatic as what we had posed before. You can see on the sheet the difference between the current and the new proposed times. The goal here with this one, there's, and we'll talk about this in a second, but there's no, this is dealing with the time. This is the variable that we have a little bit of control over right now. This does not deal with supply and demand, which is our real issue. But what this does is give us time. It increases the gap time between tiers, and it will allow us to better address the delays that we're getting into now. A lot of the double routing that we have been doing lately, this may not necessarily end that, but a lot of what we're experiencing, this is the idea here, by increasing these gaps, creating some time that gives us a little bit of flexibility on certain routes, might be able to or should mitigate some of those delays. I guess we'll go through this and then we can come back for questions. But
so when we think about the schedule proposed changes, just some notes to kind of summarize what those changes are from the previous slide. As you can see that we're shifting several of the schools earlier in the day. Bunsell by 15 minutes, STEM by 10, MHS by 12. Also with the 7-12, we're reducing Bunsell, their instructional day, by 5 minutes. So when you think about state minimums that are required by the state for instruction, when you reduce the middle school day by 5 minutes, we are still 21 days above the state minimum. So that's a very nice cushion. And then too, you can see how far above we are for ECHS and MHS as well, with an 8-minute reduction. Creekview, shifting 5 minutes sooner, no reduction to the instructional day. Elementary, we're shifting the opposite direction by just 5 minutes, so we can get more of a gap between those two tiers. Again, no change in instructional time for our elementaries as well. And of course, all K and pre-K follow right along with the elementary schedule. Ryan referenced these. What are some advantages of moving to the proposed schedule? Increased time between the tiers. That's big. Whether it's 10 minutes or an additional 15 or 20, every minute counts. It's good to reduce the late services. And again, you referenced the double routing impact as well. And again, we hope to gain some capacity as well due to the work with the TPS. And as you can tell, there's a lot of construction around time. So drivers face a lot of traffic issues, whether it's a train, a closed road, backup traffic. Getting some more time between the tiers is something that we've heard for a little while anyway. So this is going to help the drivers and reduce their stress, because additional time makes a difference. Again, this proposed schedule, it's not going to eliminate late busing. Daily staffing levels continue to be a challenge. The benefit's really going to show if we're able to get our staffing normalized, get people back from leave, add additional staff. Then we really would see the fruits of this schedule change in a major way. But again, we get back to that human capital is what limits us with the proposed schedule yet. And of course, in January, our goal is to put a committee together and work for a solution for the upcoming school year, 24-25 as well. If we move forward with this proposed schedule, we want to give families and staff plenty of notice. Therefore, the implementation date would be November 13th, which is a Monday. Also, too, just a quick staffing update. A lot of these slides probably look similar to what you saw from Lynette last month. Again, a couple updates have been made. Pretty self-explanatory. We want to get up to 34 routes staffed with 34 contracted drivers, and we want to have at least 3 or 4 substitutes on hand. Currently, we're at 28 routes staffed with 22. And because we have 6 contracted drivers on approved leave. Again, you can see our wonderful substitutes that have been doing a tremendous job with us. And of course, challenges is our routing coordinators driving every day, and our mechanic drives almost on a daily basis. Again, just a review of the slide that we shared last month in regards to staffing. Again, our substitutes have been doing a great job. Our daily route drivers have just been doing amazing work, as Ryan referenced earlier as well. They've really stepped up. Again, you can see the open positions. You know what? HR and Transportation Department's been working hard on efforts of gaining new employees in our department. We have 5 possible candidates in progress, as you can see. Also, we're excited with the Drive With Us event, open house, set for this Saturday morning from 9 to 11 over at the transportation lot. If people want to come on out, ask some questions of drivers or director, learn a little bit more about what it takes to drive a bus, get inside a bus, sit in that driver's seat, see how it feels. Come on out Saturday morning. Again, definitely a lot of efforts to try to gain more employees in our department, because again, that's our greatest challenge. So a lot of effort and time have been put towards this. Anything else we need to add, Brian, Todd? Okay, we'll open it up for questions.
All right, questions, anyone? First off, thank you for everything that you're doing and all the challenges that you're dealing with every single day. We just, really appreciate you trying to keep those kids in the classroom.
Good impressive.
And we are extremely grateful for the bus drivers that we have and the substitute drivers that we have that are showing up and trying to make things work. From what I understand, it's a little bit of magic going on to make everything happen. So we really appreciate all the hard work, the hours that you're putting in, that the drivers are putting in to help resolve this issue. Quick question, what is our current number of drivers today, with a understanding that the goal is to get to 34 drivers with maybe 3 or 4 subs? I'm just trying to understand how big our gap is right now. 28?
Currently, we have the 28 routes staffed with 22 contracted drivers.
So the 22 drivers are in essence covering 28 routes. Some subs are popping in there, but on a daily basis, drivers are picking up students off other routes and adding to their route to fill the gap.
Does that include Cody in there? Do we have to?
No, Cody's one of the amazing substitutes.
Huh?
Cody's one of the amazing substitutes that steps up in emergency situations.
So how many do we need to pick up on Saturday?
I'd like 10 or 15.
10 or 15? Okay.
10 or 15 would be fine.
I mean, even though our goal is 34, I have told Lynette and Todd, let's shoot for 36. It's not going to hurt us with how things have been trending to go ahead and contract out 36 people. So in the back of my mind, 36 is probably more the goal. 34, I'm sure everyone would be thrilled if we had 34, but I think we need to get to that point. I will tell you, other districts have held similar events. Dublin just had one last weekend. 9 people showed up, they hired 2. So it's obviously not just Marysville that's in this struggle, but you know, we've contacted people who used to work for us. We've had people from Buckeye Valley come and sub for us when they didn't have school. We're constantly in communicate, or someone from London came up and drove for us one day. So it's kind of I think you said a little bit of magic, but I definitely know Todd and his team are working lots of magic every night to try to fill those spots.
Yeah, this isn't a question. It's kind of an advertisement, maybe, and that is, if anyone out there is watching and contemplating this and thinking, well, I couldn't drive a big yellow Twinkie. They've gotten much easier to drive. I used to drive, and if you can drive a pickup truck or a Suburban, you can drive a big yellow bus also. They're automatic, and a lot of amenities, a short wheelbase, a lot of things going on that makes it a lot easier than the old school bus with the gear shift and the door handle and all that. So don't shy away from this job because you think you can't do it.
Just to add one thing to that, this Saturday, you are allowed to drive a bus. Whether you have a CDL license or not, you can at least try it out in the parking lot and see if you like it.
Or say that you have like 0 blind spots. That will help them. I actually drive bus better than I do my own car most of the time. So you see everything around you, and people think that I'm crazy because I'm short and I can drive a bus. But the seats move, they adjust to you, and the mirrors adjust to you. You can see everything. So I think if we can get some people out, they'll really, really enjoy it and actually see it's not as bad as what people want to make it out to be.
Yeah, it's a great, we're over at Transportation, a lot of great people, a lot of great colleagues there. When you get to know them, really good people, trying to do right by kids in this district.
So what are the base requirements? As long as we're doing an advertisement, let's go ahead and throw it all out there.
You have to have your passenger license, CDL, so CDL B. Other than that, there's some training that's involved with our OBI that's going to get you prepared to take the actual test. So the temporary permit is the first step that you would go to get from the DMV. It's basically just a written test. When you pass that, you get your temporary. And then from that, you move on to working with the OBI, training on the pre-trip, driving the bus, driving the route, learning how to get kids on and off the bus. After that, you take your test, and then you're off and running with your very own route.
There will be a pre-certification class they have to take as well.
Oh, yeah. There's a 4 or 5 part class that you have to take as well. It's pre-certification.
Thank you all for being here today and for the hard work that you guys are doing to help serve our students. I know we have something on the agenda to change the bell schedule, and I know you say it's not going to eliminate late busing, but what can we give to our parents? Is it going to reduce the occurrences of late busing? And because I think there's going to be an expectation by parents, if we make a change to the schedule, even though it's minor, it is minor, and for most of our buildings, it's minor change. Are we going to see a reduction of late busing?
So and jump in here whenever, but in working with TPS, they have taken our current framework. So from a driver perspective, from a parent perspective, it's not as if the world got flipped upside down. So that's good for drivers because for the most part, it's going to be something they know. And it's good for parents because for the most part, their stops should be pretty similar, if not the same. There could be maybe a change in a bus number, and pathways that buses take may have changed. So it's cleaned up some of what we've done. What's that?
Efficient.
Yeah, so we've gained, but 5% or so efficiency as measured from TPS. So part of the way I would answer that is, again, it's hard to get into the supply and demand part of the equation. When we get into the time part of the equation, when we landed on this, to be quite honest, when we landed on this, our staffing situation was better. Where we are now, we have a lot of routes that are, I don't know if we have any that are really still well under an hour. So to say with any certainty that would be eliminated would be very difficult. To say that we are going to help that situation, that's why we're doing it. If we don't do anything, we're certainly going to experience the same results until we deal with supply and demand. If we move in this direction, I think what they would say, and I'll give them a chance to talk about this and I'll get out of the way, but I think what the driver side would say is we're giving them, we talked about how they're carrying a bigger load. We're giving them a better chance to deal with the assistance that one route might have with another with the time we've added. So I think what we would say is, or what I would say is that while this isn't sort of the magic bean, to stay on the magic theme, but what it is going to do is help us reduce the amount of strain the drivers have. It will help us reduce the amount of delay that the students are experiencing, and will give us a little more confidence, maybe a lot more confidence, in these mornings where we're sort of trying to patch it together, to be able to go out and really sort of effectively run routes in a way that doesn't require students to be an hour late to school or an hour late getting home. I don't know, do you want to jump in? Sorry, one more thing. The time piece of it, Jonathan hit on it. It's something we've been talking about for several years. As we continue to improve our staffing, I'm sure a lot of people are going to show up. Bill's going to bring all his friends, and everybody will have that figured out. But once we start to build that back and we start to get some people back, that sort of proportional efficiency increase, we will see those gains because we have that time. And it will give us the ability to, again, sort of adjust to those variables as they are thrown at us. The time that we're adding with this, although I wish it could be much greater, has to be constrained by that school day. So, okay, I'll get out of the way here.
So I looked at them this morning, and routes for all 3 tiers are running between 40 and an hour long each tier. So just looking at the old schedule, it gives me 20-ish minutes to get kids to where they need to be safely. Looking at the new schedule, it gives me roughly almost 40 minutes to get kids to where they need to be. So is it going to solve lateness without drivers? No. But they're not going to be an hour and a half or 2 hours late. They're going to be maybe 40 minutes late. So in essence, if I can get time, that gives me more time to get more kids where they need to be closer to their actual time to be there. That's kind of where I'm at.
And I'm sorry, and those extreme situations that we're talking about is one thing where, where we're doubling these back like we have in the last couple of days. The more sort of daily struggle where we're talking 10, 15 minutes or the 20 minutes, say that Edgewood has had pretty a lot at the beginning of the year in particular, Edgewood and Raymond. I think you really will see a difference with those situations. So those extreme situations where, where we have the unexpected sort of late day or early morning or even late night call off, that's where we're like, let's just get them to school. The more regular delays that we've been seeing, I think this really speaks more to that. I mean, really, if we just want to put it in a nutshell, the outliers are the outliers, and they're going to be until we hire more people.
And I just want to make sure that if we make a change to the bell schedule, parents are going to have an expectation that this, I understand, doesn't fix it. And I also want to say, every meeting we have seemed to lose a driver in the last, since the school year. And so that's just my realistic concern, is making sure if we're going to move down this path, that we can try to at least reduce some of it. I have a really silly question. I'm sure there's a good answer for it. The high school, we have 2 different stop times. Is there a way to have one drop off for 2 high schools? Is that legal? Is that something we can do? Because there might be some time there that we can free up if we could achieve that. I just thought of that while we're looking at this presentation. I'm sorry.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but just there's that 5-minute difference so we can get kids picked up at ECHS and get over to the high school so ECHS kids can get on their bus that's going to be taking them home, just so we can get out from
Understood.
ECHS.
My question is, if there's, say, the Impact Stadium, if everyone met at the Impact Stadium and loaded up on buses, you make one stop for 2 buildings instead of having that load time, drop off, load time, transport time to get to the other building. We may not have the answer tonight, but I wonder if that's something that there might be some extra time there. My last question is, what's the communication piece going to be to parents? Is routing set, or do we know what that looks like for the launch date, and how much notice will parents have?
We're still working on the routing. The AM routes are in. They're working on the PM routes, and then Melissa and myself have an opportunity to talk with the people that actually put the routes in and go through them, get our drivers to go through them, get our drivers to drive them to make sure that everything that we've given them makes sense and we didn't forget anything. We didn't forget to add a shuttle or something that we're currently doing today. Not done yet, but they're working and they're on time so far.
And two, at the right time, Jermaine, when Power School is updated, notification will be given to parents. Check your Power School parent portal for transportation times, pickup, drop-off times, etc.
Okay.
The 2 programs are supposed to communicate
currently
a lot better than what right now the 2 programs we have do not communicate.
Oh, there's going to be an update to the system. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. So The new transportation software will speak to Power School
Okay.
and it be a little more accurate.
Yep.
Essentially.
I just have to ask this question because the routing has been a concern for delaying the plan, the implementation. Are we 90% there? Where are we at in confirming routing?
Well, the AM's done and they're working on the PM. I would say at the end of this week, they should probably be at least 75% done with the complete routing.
And no matter what, this Belch schedule will still help either way. Okay, thank you.
Yes, it will.
Last comment I wanted to make was getting our kids to and from school safety is our number one priority. And, you know, there may be frustration. I'm certain there's frustration. I've heard from parents. But getting our kids to school and back home again safely is the number one priority. And it's very important that we get our bus mechanic back in the bus garage because we're very concerned about the maintenance aspect of school buses.
I would also say that we met with Aaron quite a while today, I think 5 of us, and talked about, you know, promising he would never be on a bus on Mondays. We also have a very strong applicant that we met with today to be the second mechanic. He'll need about probably a week notice to the position he's in. And then we've added another company that's coming in on Monday to walk through with Aaron and take care to help get them caught up. So when 2 people are there, they're ready to go. So that is kind of taking shape.
It's definitely a lot of teamwork going on here. I, again, appreciate it, and we appreciate our parents too, because as you said, I know it's been frustrating and people have schedules and then the kids get home late, it throws everything out the window. But I do appreciate them having patience and just hope they understand how hard everybody's working to try and fix this challenging situation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. All right, enrollment update. Our PK-12 enrollment is at 5,633, which is up 147 students from that's October of last year. Edgewood construction update, we're down to just final items. There was HVAC work being done, and then also we're still expecting the interior door locks. They were due this week. I'm not sure if they're in or not, but those are kind of the final 2 pieces there. Chestnut Building, as you can see, plumbing fixtures are going in as of today in the renovated area. They're doing finish painting, flooring, and some windows, some work with fire alarms and that type of stuff. They're still looking at November 3rd as substantial completion. So pretty excited about that.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you plan to have an open house or for both
We would
buildings
like
at some
to.
point?
I'd like to get everything
right,
underway.
once it's done.
Yep. We did add the video of Edgewood space to the website, so if anyone's interested in seeing that place with students alive, I guess, it's on there. Staffing update, I think you have kind of gotten an overview of the transportation side of it. Just a reminder of the event on Saturday. Open positions, we've talked about drivers, mechanics. We have the 5 aid positions. We still have 1 intervention specialist. I guess it's ironic Kim was here tonight as well. We have a high school custodian position as well at this time. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions of Diane?
I just had a question about the building aids, because I know there's going to be for bus and building aids. Do we have any candidates in the candidate pool? In the pipeline, I should say.
Not a ton.
Not a ton, okay.
I would have to go back and look. I looked last Friday, and I think there were about 3 total applicants for those 5 positions.
Okay.
So principals, we had talked to some principals about targeting. We really have an interest in potentially locating bilingual candidates, just because that is a barrier on the bus as well. And we thought that might serve a purpose. So we are reaching out to some families to see if we can make some connections as well that way. So I'll keep you up to date on that.
Thank you. Next, our treasurer's report. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. So for my report, I'm going to talk about the November 5-year forecast. We have that up there on the screen. The next slide, James. So first slide, always like to show our revenues versus expenditures and our ending cash balance from a high level. If you look at the circled area there, you'll see that shows we actually have a big change compared to the forecast in May, where we actually have revenues exceeding expenditures in fiscal year 24 by a slight amount, by about $944,000. So that was some good news for this November forecast. A couple of things I want to point out on that expenditure line, so that the red line is expenditure. So if you look back at the actuals for fiscal year 21 through 23, you'll note that the upward trend isn't quite as upward as it is in the projected years. So really the drivers is why that's a little flatter there than what it is going forward. First off, we had a large amount of ESSER money in those years, so that we used that to help reduce general fund expenditures. And then also after the levy failure, we cut $2.5 million of expenditures. So that's driven those numbers down. But then you'll see the numbers start to rise. So in fiscal year 25, all of those ESSER staff, they were previously general fund paid. We then began paying them with ESSER money to save the general fund money. That's now going to hit back into the general fund in fiscal year 25. Just from a salaries alone standpoint, that's a little over $1.1 million. So good news that we were able to save the money over that several year period, but it's got to come back to the general fund now. I'll talk a little more about the revenue when we get to another slide. Looking at the green line, that is our ending cash balance. So you'll see there, fiscal year 27, we're slightly above zero. That's about a balance of right around $1 million. And then the fiscal year 28, we would show a deficit of $13.7 million. Okay, next slide, James. Okay, so this is looking at the same slide we were looking at previously, but comparing that to where we were back in May of 23. So the first thing I would point out there is revenues versus expenditures in fiscal year 24. So at that time period, we were projecting expenditures to exceed revenues by about $4.5 million. So that's what's called an operating deficit. So we were showing a $4.5 million operating deficit in fiscal year 24, whereas now with some of the changes that we've seen in revenues, we actually have a operating surplus of close to $1 million. So obviously a very significant change there. And it was a swing of about $5.5 million in ending cash balance. And then also looking at the projected ending cash balance back in May of 23, in fiscal year 26, we were projecting a slight deficit of about $200,000, and then fiscal year 27, we were showing a $15 million deficit. So that significant change in revenue that we've seen this year pushed those deficits out significantly. So that was good news. Oh, thank you. Okay. So this next slide looks at our ending cash balance policy. So there's two factors at play there. One of the policy factors is maintaining 1 month of expenditures as an ending cash balance. We meet that part of the cash balance policy through fiscal year 26. Then when we get to fiscal year 27 and 28, we would be in violation of that policy. And then the second factor of the policy is having expenditures exceed revenues by no more than 1%. And we will meet that factor in fiscal year 24, but beginning in fiscal year 25, we would be in violation of that factor as well. So looking at our revenues for fiscal year 24, we're projecting just under $63 million of revenues. We break that down between the local and state sources. Local sources equate to about 54%, state about a little over 45%. Total revenue for the year is up $5.8 million compared to what we were looking at back in May. The most significant portion of that is our state foundation funding. That's up $3.8 million. Back in around May of last year, we received simulations from the House of Representatives from their proposed budget, and at that point we saw that we could see an increase of close to $2 million. And then a couple months later, after the budget was passed, we then saw simulations where we could see up around $3 million of growth. Then around, I think it was August or September, those numbers were updated again, and then that increase jumped up to close to $3.5 million. So then now in October, once our actual enrollment was input and they take that into account, now we're sitting at 3.8. And there's actually still some factors that aren't updated yet in the formula, so I don't think that's going to make for a major swing. There's some more minor things, but there still could be some changes. And I'll note, and we'll talk a little more about that coming up, but this forecast does assume some growth in state funding. Two other big items for revenue. So the real estate tax is up $1 million compared to what we were projecting back in May. Whereas the state funding, that number we assume flows through the forecast. The real estate tax, that's a one-time bump of the $1 million. That's due to the extremely large triennial update that we received, about that 26% increase in valuations. When that happened, there's kind of a shift between people paying their taxes, so more people end up paying in the second half compared to the first half. If you look back in the forecast about 3 years ago, the same thing happened where you saw a big jump. I shouldn't say a big jump, but a jump in revenues in one year. The next year drops actually down lower, and then you just kind of level out. So it's just a shift. And then finally, interest revenues, projecting to be up $1 million compared to where we were projecting previously. Interest rates have continued to rise. Star Ohio is about 5.56% today, and it's just slowly risen over the last couple months. I don't expect that will continue to rise for too much longer. So I do show decreases in interest revenues throughout the forecast projected years. Regardless of interest rates, our cash balance is going to be decreasing, so we'll have less money invested, which will also decrease our interest revenues. I also wanted to point out with that other revenue, which is it's a small part of the budget, but one part of the other revenue is also our pay to participate fees that are paid by our students that are participating in athletics and extracurriculars. So that equates to about $290,000 of revenue in a year. And I know there's been a lot of discussion about the supplementals that we pay for the coaches. So that $290,000 goes to help offset just a portion of what we pay for supplementals. So after the cuts and reductions that were made, we're still spending close to $550,000 on those supplemental contracts. So as you can see, the pay to participate fees really only make up about half of what is needed to cover those costs. So this slide shows again our state versus local funding. The yellow slide, the yellow bars being our local and the red being our state. If you compare this to what we were looking at previously, the gap has narrowed a little bit, looking at state versus local, because we've got such a large increase in state funding this year. As I mentioned, the triennial update, that gave a bump to our real estate tax revenues due to our 4.7 inside mills. So you're also seeing that increase in the yellow local line. As I mentioned, our state funding, this is, I think, probably the first time that I've done a forecast where I'm projecting significant growth in state funding, so hopefully the state doesn't make me a liar here. But so we're assuming 100 new students per year, each year. Now, obviously, that number is not going to be right. You know, there's been years that we're above that, below that. We're just assuming that as an average. There's also a good chance that the average is over 100. So that's where we're at with this forecast. But obviously, this is a living document, and we can make changes as we need to. That 100 new students would equate to an additional $500,000 per year. But I would point out, if you look at the details of the forecast, you look at the state funding in fiscal year 25, you're actually going to see a slight decrease there. So the reason being, this state funding formula, the thing that we know 2 years for sure. Then after that, there will be a new state biennial budget. Who knows what happens after that? But we know next year that there's they'll update the district wealth factors. With that triennial update, we're going to look wealthier based on higher property values. So that would bump down our state funding in fiscal year 25. And I'd also note on that state funding side, this year, fiscal year 24, we will receive $640,000 of TPP reimbursement, which will be the final payment that we will receive. This hasn't changed from last presentation, so our overall values increased 21.3% compared to tax year 22. As I've noted, we're very close to the 20 mil floor. Right now, our operating millage is at 20.17. You don't typically see a lot of change in the 2 years between updates and reappraisals, so there's a chance that we could drop down to the 20 mil floor in the next 2 years, but more likely it would wait until we hit that next reappraisal. Dick, I don't want to steal any of Dick's thunder talking about House Bill 187, but if that does get approved, which has been approved by the House already, that does not decrease our revenue, so it doesn't decrease our existing funding, but what it would do is decrease or inhibit our increases in the future. So it's already difficult for us to see increases because of House Bill 920, right? Yeah, sorry, I get my House bills mixed up. So because of House Bill 920, we already don't get to see very much of an increase typically. If you look back historically, we don't always see significant state funding increases. A lot of districts are trying to get to the 20 mil floor because that allows you to see inflationary growth due to property value increases. So with this House Bill 187 and some other discussions that are happening at the state, it's very likely that some legislation will be passed that could make it even more difficult for schools to see inflationary revenue growth, which what in essence would do is force schools to be on the ballot more often and or for larger amounts. So again, just to summarize on the revenue side, House Bill 33, so we've got the state fair funding plan for fiscal year 24 and 25, so we do know with some certainty what our state funding will be this year and next. Again, from fiscal year 26 and beyond, that's anybody's guess, but as I've explained what we're assuming for this forecast. It is worth pointing out that we are on the formula this year. So what that means is sometimes you're a guarantee district, which means you just get the same amount. Sometimes you're a cap district, which means you're not going to, even if you grow with new students, you still don't get any more money. In the past, that's typically been the norm for us. We were a cap district. So when we would grow by enrollment, we wouldn't get either any or as much growth as we should. But as of now, we would appear to be a formula district. So as we grow, we should get the full amount of state funding that should come to us. If you compare revenues to expenditures in the 5 years of the forecast, even with the more aggressive, what I would say is more aggressive revenue estimates, we're still showing an average growth of less than 1% annually in revenues compared to an expenditure growth of 4.4% annually. So also point out that at some point, this growth we're assuming of 100 new students per year, that will lead to the need for a new building, which would be a bond and operating levy to open a new building or buildings. Looking at expenditures, really not a lot of change in the current year compared to the May forecast. I would note that salaries and benefits make up 88% of our operating costs. Already discussed the spike in fiscal year 25 due to the depletion of ESSER funding. Some of the changes, while you're not going to see a large change in fiscal year 24 just because of other factors that have moved around, this will change some increases in the out years. So we did add some staffing this year. So we added 12 staff as of the date of this forecast. Some of these are positions that haven't been filled yet, but they're trying to fill, but this forecast assumes that they will be filled. So that's 4 bus drivers, 5 student aides, and then 3 teachers that are on the special ed or English learner type of teacher. Comparing this forecast and the assumptions in the out years to what we were at in May, in fiscal year 25, we were assuming a 2% increase or a 2% raise for staff. That has been bumped up to 3% for fiscal year 25. And then looking at the out years, fiscal year 26 through 28, previously we were at 2% in the assumptions. Based on looking at a 5-year average, as well as looking at what other schools in the area are doing so that we can remain competitive, that 2% really wasn't realistic. So I bumped that up to 2.5. Doesn't mean that's where we're going to be or where we have to be. I'm just trying to make the forecast as realistic as possible. Then also, same thing with insurance. In the past, I had projected 8% in the out years, but if you look back at a 5-year average, we were closer to 9.5%. This year, in January, we're going to see an 8.6% increase. So I bumped those out years up to 9. Again, hopefully that's wrong and we get some savings there, but again, trying to make it as realistic as possible. Levy history, this is the slide that I always show you, so I won't hit it too much. Again, the last new money levy was passed in 2008, so we're now at 15 years since the district has had a new money levy. All of our levies are continuing levies, so no levies need to be renewed, but that also means we're not seeing significant growth on those levies. And as I've said many times, the lack of revenue growth combined with enrollment growth could lead to a levy cycle, meaning we're likely to be on the ballot on a somewhat continuous basis. So there's obviously been discussion about a November 2024 levy, so just kind of go over high level some potential levy scenarios. As a reminder, May 23, the levy that failed at that time was an 8.4 mil levy. That would have generated $9.6 million per year. So at that time, $9.6 million was what we needed to hit that ending cash balance target. So just keep that in mind. That 8.4 mils would have cost the owner of a $300,000 home $882 per year. So again, kind of hitting that cash balance policy again. So there's the 2 components. One, that expenditures do not exceed revenues by more than 1%. Okay, so with the levy recommendations that I'm going to make or scenarios that I'm going to share, we will not meet that first component of the cash balance policy in any year after the levy if it passes. The only way that we would meet that component of the cash balance policy is if we were to pass a 10 mil levy. So if we were to pass a 10 mil levy, we would meet this component through fiscal year 27. And then on the last year of the forecast, we still would not meet that policy. The second component, the cash balance for current year and following 4 years, at least equal to 1 month of expenditures. If you look at that component and you apply that to fiscal year 28, which is the last year of the forecast, we would need that balance to be right around $6.5 million. Okay, so when I did my levy scenarios, that is the target that I picked. Doesn't mean that's the target we have to pick, but for these scenarios, that's what I went with. And so these scenarios you're going to see all end up with a fiscal year 28 ending cash balance at or around $6.5 million. To get there, we need to generate roughly $6 million annually to achieve that cash balance. And I'm just going to hit these high level. I figure at some point we're probably going to want to do a work session or something to do some more high level, or I guess detailed level simulations and those kinds of things. So this is just some high level stuff here. These aren't the only options. There's a lot of different ways you could get there, and then you could also make some minor tweaks in millage. You could, shave off a $500,000 here or add a $500,000, that kind of thing. So we can talk about those later as well. But in general, these four options would get you where we're talking about with the cash balance. So first option would be a $5.5 million property tax. Again, that would cost the owner of a $300,000 home $577 annually. Again, that compares to last levy where that ask would have been $882. So significant savings to our voters. And again, the big driver for that is that increase in state funding that we received. There's been discussion or questions about an income tax. So in lieu of the $5.5 million property tax, if we wanted to go fully with an income tax, we would have to go with a 0.75% income tax. And again, that would meet pretty much the same goal as the $5.5 million property tax. And then also you would have the option of going with a combination levy where you have partial property tax as well as an income tax. That's all on one issue, so it would just be one vote for one combo levy. You could kind of do that two ways. One would be you could go smaller millage and higher income tax, or you could go vice versa. So if you went with a $2 million property tax and a 0.5% income tax, or around a $3.5 million property tax and a 0.25% income tax. And, as we've talked in the past, obviously one of the main benefits of that income tax is typically you're going to see growth, whereas the property tax, you're really not going to see much growth. Some other considerations, how do we handle the cuts and the class size increase that we've seen when that levy failed? So that was $2.5 million of cuts, mostly to salaries, that has definitely caused an impact to our teachers. You're seeing higher class sizes, higher loads for everyone. Looking at this forecast does not assume that those cuts or reductions are replaced. So that's also a discussion that'll have to be had. Is there some of those things we want to bring back? And if so, that would potentially impact the millage that is requested, or would impact what that cash balance looks like in fiscal year 28. So that's just something we need to consider. If we were to keep the same goal of hitting that $6.5–7 million mark in fiscal year 28, and if we were to bring back all of those reductions, that $5.5 million levy would have to be bumped up to an $8 million levy to bring back all reductions and maintain that same goal. If we were to go with this plan and implement one of these four levy options, we would likely be back on the ballot again in 27 or 28. And again, kind of looming over all of this is the idea of a new building, which would be an operating and bond levy as well. We've talked in the past of trying to get out to 2029 when we would have the bond millage falling off, so that we could have a no new millage levy, or at least partially to fund that. And we're in the process of doing some long-term planning to find out how likely it is that we can reach that goal. Okay, and my final slide. This is, again, just like our first slide, but this one here has the levy, one of the four levy options implemented in here. So again, you'll see in fiscal 24, there's no change because the levy takes effect in 25. So the line between revenue and expenditures, the gap does narrow. But like I said, at no point will revenues exceed expenditures with that levy. The ending cash balance, though, as you can see, we would be above, no deficit throughout the forecast, and then in fiscal year 28 showing right around $6-7 million surplus. So that is all I have. If there's any questions.
I'm sure there are questions, comments. And I didn't know if you want, I know you had your Finance Committee look this over last Monday. Dick and I were there. I didn't know if you wanted to share any comments or either one of us.
Well, I would say the one thing that came that I thought was a good question and maybe a question that the people in our community have is, well, we've got this large cash balance this year. We're looking at, what was it, around $27 million. Why not wait? Why not push that levy out? And which is a fair question, and then somebody sees that large number, that might be, what they might think. The reason in my opinion, we don't want to do that is that every year you push it out and wait, the next levy has to be that much larger. So by going in November 24, we're looking at a $5.5 million levy. We push that number out, now we're getting back to a number close to the number that failed.
Questions, comments? Mr. Smith?
Yeah, Todd, you've thrown a number of numbers out there tonight. $1 million here, $3.8 million from the state and so forth. On a monthly basis, what does it cost to run the school district? Just as kind of a general month to month.
Yeah, from an operating budget standpoint, it's around $5 million a month.
So if any of the levy choices are where we end up, what that would mean is that in 2028 we would have just over 1 month of operations in cash. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now I know, I think one of the items that we have on tonight is a refinancing of some bonds. And how has that changed the tax collection for the taxpayers in our community?
Yeah, so it's been significant. Again, we always talk about our buckets of money. So from the school standpoint, that bond savings does not impact our operating fund. But from a taxpayer standpoint, it's all money that they're paying. So that is savings that's right to your pocket. So I did put some numbers together. Since I've been here, we've done 3 bond refundings, and then this will be our second bond conversion. So the first refunding we did in fiscal year 14 was $844,000 in savings. Then we did another refunding in 15 that was $5.16 million in savings. We did a refunding in fiscal year 22 of $1.3 million. Then the conversion we did in fiscal 23 was just under $1 million in savings. This one we're doing tonight is much smaller, only about $115,000 in savings, but that equates to $8.3 million of savings, which is just, that's just straight savings to our taxpayers. That's over a long period of time from fiscal year 14 through the end of the bonds, which is fiscal year 29. And one of the ways, the way you see that savings is in the reduction of the millage that you're paying in the bond fund. So if you look back in 2015 through 2018, we were paying 9.41, we as taxpayers were paying 9.41 mils towards that bond fund. That dropped down to 7 mils in 2020. In 2022, that was dropped to 6.6 mils. And then currently, we're only paying 5.85 mils towards that bond fund. So, that's a reduction of close to 50% on that tax rate that's being applied.
Thank you.
Okay, just as a point of clarification, we did have a no new millage in 2018, which seems to be causing a lot of confusion in the community. And I remember you talking about the whole bucket situation over and over again. Could you just one more time review through how the millage dropped and then we added millage to the permanent improvement levy? And so it was actually no increase, but it was a shift from one bucket to the other?
Exactly, and it's really, in essence, functionally similar to what we're talking about doing in 2029. So at that point, and when we did that, as we just talked about, we did have our bond millage dropping. So our bond millage dropped by 2 mills. And what we told our taxpayers was, well, you know, our tax rate in this bond fund is going to drop by 2 mills. We need that money in our permanent improvement fund. So if you will allow us to take that money that you're going to be saving over here in the bond fund and allow us to collect that in the PI fund, you're going to pay the same amount of taxes, and we'll be able to now have that money in the permanent improvement fund to use for things that we do with the PI fund.
Right. Second thing is, and again, I'm separating out these buckets a little bit. The current bond millage is down to 5.85, and we collect 7.5 million, kind of roughly.
Correct.
Okay, and that's our mortgage payment on our buildings, and that is done in 2029.
Yes.
Correct?
Yep.
Okay, so that has been the plan all along, is that at that point our mortgage will be paid off, and then we'll be able to do a new bond issue and build a new building or whatever the need is at that time, correct?
Right. I'd say the variable there is how much millage we will have to apply to a no new millage. So I don't know that I'm confident to say that we'll be able to build a building and staff it for free, so to speak. But it would definitely be subsidized quite a bit by that no new millage portion.
Okay. My next question has to do with additional unknown income. So solar farms income is supposed to be coming sometime in the future. Have we pinned down yet kind of where that is and what it's going to look like?
Yeah, so we're in contact, constantly talking about that. We just talked to the county auditor recently, and that we don't start receiving funding until that is actually generating electricity. So the earliest that we were told that we could potentially receive money would be 2025. I've also talked to treasurers in districts that have solar farms, and they said, don't count that money until it's actually in your hand. We're just not going to count our chickens until they're hatched. If I were to project and say, what are we looking at? I would say we're going to be, especially in 25 and early on, we're going to be less than $1 million. But it will be, real money. But considering 1 mill generates about $1.1 million for the district, I think the solar farms is going to be, the equivalent of less than $1 million, at least early on.
That same point is true for casino revenue. There's a lot of hype about school districts get casino revenue. In actuality, the amount we get is fairly low.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I'm thinking that's 360, 370,
yeah, yes.
370,000.
Yes. So just as a point of interest, okay, for all the hype that gets, that contribution to the district is actually pretty minimal.
Right.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, I have a question. When we talk about being the 12th lowest tax district and also one of the wealthier tax districts, which concerns me, but are we counting the PI bond and operating in that, or just the operating?
The local tax effort takes into account school taxes in total. So that would, that's a state.
So it's everything. So we're the 12th lowest on everything.
Correct.
That's what I thought you were
And I would
saying.
just clarify that that's tax effort, so that's different than actual tax rate.
Correct.
So they look at,
I got you.
Yes. So because some people are like, well, wait, so it's just got to make sure people understand that difference between tax effort and tax rate.
Right.
Questions?
Did the Finance Advisory Committee make a recommendation on which levy option that we should pursue?
We certainly, posed that question, and people gave input. I would say it was mixed. I think that, I don't think everyone there recognizes that the value of an income tax to a school district, financially speaking. But I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dick and Sue, I felt like we had people that liked each option separately, you know what I mean? So some people said, I like property tax, some said I prefer the income tax, some said I like the combo. So I would say inconclusive.
Okay. And then I know the recommendation, looking at the 5-year forecast with the expenditures, our contingency plan reduced the budget, the expenditures by $2 million, but you see an increase. Is that because it just reduced like the projected increase of the expenditures? If someone looks at our 5-year forecast and then it just simply assumes there's going to be a $2 million reduction on the expenditures, how do we explain that to people?
Yeah, so if you look at, it's I don't want to call it simple math, but it is simple math. So if you look at fiscal year 24, there's a number, let's just talk about salaries alone. So in fiscal year 24, there's a projection of salaries that includes the $2 million that have been cut out, okay? So that number is, a real number that should be, in lieu of any, major changes, should be pretty close to where we end up at the end of the year. So then you look at those out years, beginning in fiscal year 25. Well, what is in the forecast that's going to cause an increase in that? And again, those are only, if you look at the details behind it, there's just numbers and percentages that go into play, and those are all based on, real factors. So the main drivers behind the increase on the salary side is, one, there's going to be an inflationary raise of some sort. So for fiscal year 25, that number we've got in the forecast is 3%. In fiscal year 26 and beyond, the number we have in there is 2.5%. Based on the negotiated agreements with our unions, there's also going to be some sort of a step increase or increase based on educational advancement. So that is also a number that's going to cause increases in the salary line. Beyond that, that's really what's driving the increases. Other numbers are pretty much left stagnant. For instance, like sub costs or severance payments. I did not assume large increases in any of those things. Oh, I'm sorry, I almost forgot. We do assume with that 100 new students, we do assume an increase of 4 new teachers each year. So that also drives up that number.
With that said, the contingency also reduced staffing positions. So is it a net 4 with restoring positions, or just an additional 4 from where we're at today?
Just an additional 4 from where we are at today.
Okay. And is it safe to assume there's going to be more than just 4 teachers if we serve 100 students per year, additional 100 students per year? Right now it's, I think, 147 year-to-date increase. A couple of my concerns are that we will not be able to make it to 2029 for a new building ask, right? I think it might be closer to 27. That's just me speculating. I'm not a financial background. But would that impact what are the factors you're looking at in enrollment? Is there going to be another, the facilities committee going to be created and start looking at this so we can see, do we just get to 3 years out to that time where we need to go to the voters with a bond and operating ask? What's that type of, where were you thinking with if we continue increasing enrollment by over 100, not just 100, we know we're tight on capacity, that timeline, we would like to get to 2029, but it may not. How much time do we have to know for sure?
I still think we're in a good window. I think we're still in a good window where we've got a year that we can plan, and that's what we're in the process, right now of doing. It's, in terms of the forecast, it's as simple as if we decide we're, opening a new building from an operating side, obviously the bond is a whole separate outside of the 5-year forecast, but from an operating standpoint, we would then throw in a certain number for new staff, throw in a certain number for new supplies, utilities go up, all those different things. So you would just see a really large increase in 1 year of the forecast, and that number would continue. So again, in this forecast, we're not assuming a new building. It would not be difficult to change those assumptions and throw in the idea that, okay, we're going to throw in a new building in fiscal year 27 or fiscal year 28.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because we're looking at, levies trying to get us through 5 years, 4 years, and if we need to break it up in sections, knowing that we are anticipating maybe a building earlier than 29, I would like maybe some more conversations, and if we have a work session to explore this in more detail, that's something I'm curious about.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely having a work session, because I know, it's our plan to try and come up with a decision before the end of the year. Before the end of this year, we would like to try and have some kind of a decision out there, just for the purposes of educating the community, our levy committee having a chance to really put some things together. So I think that's kind of what I'm thinking. And I know, I guess, kind of going back to the finance committee, I did feel like they were, they supported a variety of options. There were concerns about educating about the income tax. I personally feel like with our last levy ask, there was much more talk about that, and many more people seem to just have a better awareness of that, but still, what does that mean? Who all is going to be paying the taxes? And then just the reality that an income tax doesn't tax the businesses. So just little things like that, and so I think the sooner we come up with a decision, the better it's going to be for everybody to be able to, learn, ask questions, things like that. And there were also comments made in there, the concerns about the cuts, and is it sustainable to have these class sizes and some of the other challenges that we see with with maintaining those cuts. So I know I have a concern with that myself. So those are things to talk about. But I like just your comments about the solar farm. Yeah, you can't count on that until it's here, but it's nice to know that there is possibly that potential out there. So, I don't know. So anyways, yeah, go ahead.
I guess, will we know any information about building capacity between now and the end of this year? I mean, is that something that we can maybe have some hyper focus on? Because I think that might be a factor to know how many years do we have to fund,
So, I mean, we've already have, over the last couple years, we've been putting together what is building capacity. But the thing you have to keep in mind is there's different layers of building capacity. There's what's comfortable building capacity. There's building capacity that now we're kind of crunched. And then there's building capacity that, oh wow, we've failed a levy and now we're just overflowing at the seams, and maybe we're putting in modulars and those kinds of things. So there's a lot of different layers to what building capacity really is. Do you have 25 kids in the classroom, or do you have 32 kids in the classroom? So it's not that simple of a scenario, and that's why we need to do this long-term facilities plan that we're going to do that will, again, draw community input. What does the community feel like is the right size classroom? What do they feel like they want to see in terms of new buildings and building size and all those different things, because it's really a multi-layered discussion.
Yeah, at the Finance Committee meeting, one area of comment was dealing with the cuts, and that is the impact on booster clubs and on parents that are having to pick up more of the expenses of operating the programs, and concerns about transportation, and the fact that the district is not providing transportation has caused different teams and organizations to try to figure out some way to try to meet the needs of the kids in those areas. And it kind of raised something that we've discussed before is we've got cuts, and the community and parents have stepped in to kind of backfill some of those things, but long-term, you know, more than 1 year or 2 years or whatever, is that support going to be there? And then what does that do to your programming? You know, are you able to offer athletic programs? Are you able to offer music and art and other kinds of things that are part of our district at this point? In terms of looking ahead, new buildings, I think Bill and I've both been through a number of growth experiences where I taught a class in the gym while phys ed classes were going on. And so you can get some kind of interesting situations when you start running out of classrooms and you still have kids left over. So I'm glad we're looking ahead, and, you know, we're thinking out a ways, and we'll have to make sure that we put together a good program, make sure that we evaluate what we want the district to look like in terms of the facilities off into the future.
My only, I know we talked about looking at having a decision by the end of the year. Part of me is cautious because there could be new members on the board for next year. And also I want something I've said, and I think we all agree, we need community feedback, because whatever choice we make, we have to have community support. Is there any way we could gauge the public and looking at the options that were presented to try to solicit some feedback for which option they would be comfortable with? That's just something I think between now, with the holidays approaching, is something I'm not concerned with, but I want to make sure we're very intentional about, can we do a community event or something where we can get some good feedback? I know we have the finance committee, but just with our diverse stakeholder groups.
One of the challenges of asking that question are some of the new things that have come out from the state auditor. So we would have to make sure we structured that in a certain way. It's definitely a better tool utilized by our community committee, similar to the survey they put out. So I think you kind of have, could talk to them about the data they've collected in that way. Otherwise, we'd have to talk specifically. I'm not saying it's a no, but we'd have to talk about how that's organized and what that looks like.
And I guess, and I know, like, I wouldn't want to make a decision and then come back and change it, But at the same time, you make a decision, and if there's major changes out there in the future, we would have time to make changes, because the actual deadline for going on in November is July, sometime in July, the end of July of 2024. So, I guess one of the challenges sometimes is that until you actually put something out there, frequently you don't hear too much, or you might hear a little bit. So I think that's just something that we've all lived and experienced. And kind of one more thing I wanted to point out about when we were talking about the cuts and everything is just that reality, because again, a comment, we've got a nice cash balance, why don't you bring some of those cuts back? Well, it's a compounding impact on that 5-year forecast. So it's not just $2.5 million, it's $2.5 million over 5 years, and that $2.5 million would grow along with the other raises. So, so I think that's, people can't forget that, and we can't forget, our community has to be willing to support that. You're completely right in that comment, so yeah.
Yeah,
So
I would, to echo that point, even, how many years I've done this, I still get surprised by the impact at the end of a forecast when you make a minor change. You throw $100,000 of expenditures in the first year of the forecast. Well, if you look at the ending cash balance in year 5, that's minus $500,000. So it's just definitely that compounding effect.
Right. So definitely we will be scheduling a meeting to talk about this more in detail. And I think we've talked about maybe end of November, beginning of December timeline for sure. Maybe even before that, we'll see. And in the meantime, yes, anybody who's watching this, please reach out, talk to us. I know, we talked about that combo idea, heard varying comments about that, whether or not people would understand it. And I've seen a couple things on Facebook too, so it's just kind of all over the place. But.
One of the things that kind of happened at the finance meeting is somebody would say, well, I like this idea. And then somebody would say, well, have you considered this, or what about this? And it's like, oh, well, I didn't, And so, I mean, you have to look at things and look at the total impact. The dollar amount that we need is the one thing that stays kind of constant. And how we get to that number impacts every single person, every household in this district differently. And so, as we know, people, when they look at things, they set their individual priorities and, they come to some conclusions. So, as you were saying, please give us information. And also, I hope the community is willing to receive information and to think about, where we are and where we need to be.
Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, thank you. For my report, let's see, we did have a community coffee this past Sunday. Any comments from that, Nan?
Just that we had 3 people attend and discuss the transportation issue, which I think we've covered plenty this evening.
Okay, great, thank you. Also, I thought this was wonderful. So last month, the board president from our library reached out to me, Chad Seberg, because they are going to have an opening on their board. And if people don't know this, our library is considered a school district library. So one of our jobs as a school board is to approve any of their board members. And I think you've seen that happen in the past many times. But Chad reached out and he said, I think maybe it would be a nice idea if the school board, if somebody from the school board wanted to sit in on these interviews, observe them. And so both Nan and I had a chance to observe those interviews, and I think we both agreed that the candidates were outstanding, but it was just nice to see their process, and we talked about moving forward. Let's make sure that we are working together and communicating with each other and sharing those resumes for their board candidates, and so that if we have questions, we can ask those questions. So I thought that was a really nice thing for him to do, and we were grateful to be able to take advantage of that opportunity. Also, just a quick update, we've continued to have our city small group meetings. Had one at the end of September. Our main focus has been the discussion on the residential TIF areas and how any future new property tax levy monies would be allocated. And we've also talked about the importance of having a seat at the table as early as possible for development projects, both residential and commercial. We know how important it is to be working together for our community. We both have our challenges, but we need to be working together. I know Diane, maybe give us any update on what their timeline is and kind of what the plans are moving forward right now. I know obviously we're planning to continue to meet, and there was some talk about after the election bringing everybody together again, so that if there are, well, we know there will be at least one new board member, and potentially new city council members, kind of bring everybody up to speed. So, yeah. Yeah.
Right. I had talked to Terry. We talked a little bit about our tentative agreement. They are going to have a work session and discuss the tentative agreement openly and allow both the council members who are involved to talk about that.
Right.
And then it would be a 3-read policy, so most likely the beginning of December when that would be potentially considered by council, I guess.
Okay. And I know we have asked if they might consider making something a little bit
I
quicker.
did
So we'll
ask
see.
if-
Yeah, we'll see
Yes.
if maybe that can be sped up a little bit since, I mean, it was something that was in place before and there are kind of minor revisions in there. So-
Correct, and certainly as we move forward and kind of talk about decisions and talk about asks, I think that is part of our puzzle, to your point, that
Yes.
needs to be considered and certainly weighs into the factors that we've discussed tonight.
Right.
Property, combo, which one benefits us, and looking at that agreement. So I think there is some urgency from planning and really getting the ball rolling.
Okay, great. Finally, we've talked about doing building visits and one of our conversations kind of surrounding just the fact that we are dealing with a lot of challenges and stresses this year with increased class sizes. And so I heard a couple of nice suggestions, recommendations, reminders from board members. And so we're going to do something different this time. And Diana's going to be reaching out to building principals to say, what time would you like to have a visit? I'm encouraging everybody to invite a community member to go along on the building visits. I know Jermaine did that last time. And so, we just think it's really wonderful to bring in community members who don't have a chance to get in the buildings to see what's going on, the great job our staff does with our students, and some of the challenges that we deal with every day. So the potential dates, or the dates we're looking at, are November 1st, maybe November 2nd. But since we're splitting it up, we'll each probably do 3 or 4 buildings depending on our availability. So excited about that. And that's it for my report. Right now, let's see, we have the Student Achievement Report. Ms. Savage.
I'm going to make it very quick tonight. I just wanted to highlight that all of the schools have wonderful activities going on. All the schools have gone ahead and done their initial assessments, and MTSS additional supports have been put in place everywhere from kindergarten to grade 12. So we really appreciate all that activity. One specific thing, Naven is hosting a space night, and a former astronaut will be speaking, and the OSU astronomy department will be bringing telescopes to provide students a look at the stars, which I thought that is incredible, and I would actually like to attend that.
You missed it. That was
Oh, was it?
Yes, that was the same night. That was when they had the eclipse. So I was there with 2 of my grandsons, and it was a really fun event.
That sounded awesome.
I know. Yep.
But I just want to say thank you to all the principals of all the buildings and all of the staff for all of these wonderful activities that the schools are doing each day.
Thank you. Legislative report, Mr. Smith.
The legislature in Columbus is not very active at this point. Everybody's running for re-election or raising money, one of the two. I did have a phone conversation with Representative Richardson. She was driving to Columbus one day and talked to her about some of the conversations in Columbus on the 20 mil floor. And I gave you kind of a summary of our phone conversation. And I tried to put it into terms, a few dollars here and so forth, and give her kind of an example. Todd in his presentation was talking about the levy was 577. The property tax, I think, was $577, and that equates to just under $50 a month as people are paying on their mortgage. The taxes and insurance all get rolled into that. And so I gave her an example on that. And you can read that. The Ohio Department of Education Workforce Development, really 2 things there. The governor is pushing ahead with the creation of the new department, and there's a lawsuit that's working through its way through the courts. And so that will be resolved at some point. I listed a number of bills that have been introduced. One that I highlighted, HB 140, is something that I've advocated for because it impacts our school district. And this is people passing stopped school buses where the lights are flashing and it creates a danger for kids. And so it's nice to see that there's another piece of legislation that's being brought up. Hopefully this time something will happen. So that's my report.
Thank you very much. Next report, we have our Safety and Drug Committee. Mr. Ferguson.
Yes, thank you. A lot of time has been spent with the Union County Drug-Free Coalition. A couple of events I want to share. First is Prescription Take Back Day. Is Saturday, October 28th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. If you live in our district, you can drop your unexpired, unused, unwanted medications for safe disposal at the Union County Sheriff's Office or at Marysville, the Walgreens in Marysville. A second event that was shared, I believe, with our coaches, there's going to be a coaches breakfast on November 14th at the Avalon Theater, 7:30 to 8:30. There's a speaker, Marsha Edwards, with sports psychology, coaching, and mental health. There are some raffle prizes for if you participate in teams, you can win some money with that, but it's hosted by the Drug-Free Coalition for all athletic coaches in Union County. So not just Marysville, but Union County. A big thing on November, you're going to have issue 2. The Drug-Free Coalition cannot take a stance either way, but we can educate. Some things that we are educating is that there is a coalition of associations that are opposed to the issue. That's the Buckeye Sheriff's Association, that's the Ohio Association of Chief of Police, Ohio's Children's Hospital Association, the Ohio Prosecuting Attorneys Association, and the Ohio Veterans First. So there's an impact statement that I shared that we do have that you can share to parents, anyone who's interested in learning more about recreational marijuana. There's an impact on youth. Youth who use marijuana before the age of 18 are up to 7 times more likely than adults to develop a marijuana use disorder. There's concerns with legalizing recreational use is going to send to message to our youth that it's not a harmful drug, and if you refer back to a couple months ago, it's the potency of marijuana that is significantly increased, and there are actual health impacts with long-term usage of recreational marijuana without medical care being provided. There's also a concern with impact on business. There's data from states that have legalized recreational marijuana. They have showed increases in industrial accidents, hiring shortages, marijuana addiction and criminal activity, and there's employees who've tested positive for marijuana had 55% more industrial accidents, 85% more injuries, and 75% greater absenteeism compared to those who tested negative. There's also a concern from law enforcement with driving safety. Recreational marijuana use was associated with 6.6 increase in injury crash rates and 2.3 increase in fatal crashes. About 1/4 of fatality injured drivers tested positive for marijuana. So that's the data. This is all sourced, it's all cited. It's maybe not on here, but if you visit ucdrugfree.org, you can find more additional information about recreational use of marijuana, and hopefully that helps you make your decision on issue 2. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions for him? Sure.
Yeah, I have a question. It seems to me we're trying to outlaw smoking and vape pens and then legalize marijuana. Something's wrong here. That's just my opinion.
Just a clarification too, there's going to be an argument, or you hear that it's going to increase state revenues. We looked at the state of Colorado, and yes, there was an increase in revenue, but the expenditure side with hospital costs and just public safety costs did rise higher than the increased revenue. So that's something that you'll hear. But again, you have to be 21 to buy a cigarette. And so this is going to be regulating marijuana like alcohol, so there still be a 21. It's just access. If you have read the news, you've seen a couple of stories of elementary age students accessing marijuana edibles, which connected to, we think, medical marijuana prescriptions. So access is already a concern because people aren't consuming marijuana in your traditional, the traditional ways. There's more edibles and other vape pens and stuff that are easy to consume. So thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. I would now accept a motion to approve draft minutes from our September 21st regular meeting and our September 21st Records Commission meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Keck.
Second.
Second by Mr. Smith. Any questions, comments, corrections? Hearing none, I would take a roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, motion carries. Now I would accept a motion to approve the Red Ribbon Week resolution.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Smith.
Second. Sorry.
I think, I don't know who, second by Ms. Savage. Would you like to
Sure, I can
read
read
it?
real
Sure.
quick.
Okay.
Thank you for allowing us to bring this resolution. I will go ahead and just read it. Whereas alcohol and drug abuse affect individuals, families, and communities across the nation, and whereas substance abuse is particularly damaging to one of our most valuable resources, our children, and whereas it is imperative that visible, unified prevention education efforts by community members be implemented to encourage youth and adults to live healthy, substance-free lifestyles, and whereas Marysville Exempted Village School District is committed to the safety and wellness of our students and staff. And whereas the Union County Drug-Free Coalition is determined to empower Union County youth and adults through a whole community approach. And in honor of National Red Ribbon Week, we'll commence a locally themed campaign called Be Kind to Your Mind and Live Drug-Free. And now, therefore be it, resolved by the Board of Education of the Marysville Exempted Village School District does hereby proclaim October 2023 as Red Ribbon Month and encourages its staff, students, parents, guardians, mentors, and community partners to participate in drug prevention education activities not only during Red Ribbon Month, but also throughout the year, making a visible statement that we are all firmly committed to living healthy, drug-free lifestyles. And be it further resolved that the Board of Education urges its students and staff to pledge to be kind to your mind and live drug-free.
Okay. Thank you very much for updating this for this year and bringing it to the board. So any questions or comments? All right, roll call.
Yes.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
Yes, motion carries. I would now accept a motion to approve our Board of Education goals and work plan for the 2023-2024 school year.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Savage.
Second.
Second by Mr. Keck. First, thank you, Nan and Jermaine. I know you guys got together and put this together for us. So appreciate all the time that you spend in that. Would either of you like to make some comments about just kind of the focus or?
Okay, so Jermaine and I kind of met together. We wanted to kind of slim down our goals and make them a little bit more specific to things that we want to do, try and accomplish this year. We have a lot of goals focused around, studying the 5-year forecast and how to communicate to the community more effectively on the finances within the school district. Also, it directly links to all of our strategic plans. So things like helping prepare students for the future, foster strong community partnerships, and empower extended learning for our students to become future ready, quality of education developed, and stewardship of our tax dollars, ensure every student experiences a sense of safety and belonging within our district, and foster meaningful connections and engagement with students, parents, educators, and the broader community, along with some of our development goals, specifically looking to increase our, excuse me, our boardsmanship capability.
Yes, thank you, Nan. It is directly tied to our strategic plan with a couple of additions. Some things that I like to just highlight is we're going to be intentional about celebrating our students and staff who exhibit a love for learning and our positive community leaders. And so I think you might see some of that happening at our upcoming board meetings, some of those celebrating those staff and students who exhibit a love for leading. Something else we are going to strive to kind of build maybe community ambassadors with our district, kind of reaching out to diverse stakeholder groups and recruiting ambassadors for our district. That way we are reaching, our message is reaching to neighborhoods and different groups in our community. The last thing is just board leadership and development. We all have we've been on this board. There's going to be 1 or 2 new board members to making sure we have a strong orientation process for those members. We all have liaison and assignment roles, making sure we solidify some of those descriptions, high-level descriptions. That's not too rigid, but just helps everyone know what their parameters are. And something we will do is have a semi-annual review. So last few years we've done annual reviews, but we're going to do a check-in probably January, February, just to see where we're at, or if we're making progress, and talk to as a board together to make sure at the end of the year we feel very confident. Thank you.
Any other comments? Nope.
Well, thank you to both of you for doing the work.
Yeah. Okay, great. Then roll call, please.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Devine?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you again. Next, I would accept a motion to approve the resolution for bond conversion.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Savage,
Second.
second by Mr. Smith. Todd?
Yeah, we already talked a little bit about it, so I won't say too much. What it really boils down to is 2 years ago, we had a decision to make. Do we refund the bonds now as taxable and save $1.3 million, or do we wait until now and refund them as tax exempt and, potentially we could have saved more if we waited until now. If we would have waited until now, rates have doubled compared to what they were when we refunded, so that was the right decision. We saved that $1.3 million. At the time we did that refunding, we also put in a provision that allows us to convert those taxable bonds to tax exempt this year. And the good thing is it's not based on today's rates, it's based on a set rate that we put in back in 2022. So that's why we're able to save an additional $100,000 now.
Great. Thanks for staying on top of that. Question? Mr. Keck? Oh, no? Okay. Roll call, please.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
Ms. Devine?
Yes. Motion carries. I would now accept a motion to approve the resolution for the instructional time adjustment.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Keck,
Second.
second by Mr. Smith. Any questions, comments about this?
Well, I think it's clear we've got 22 people that are driving 28 routes, which is the job that should be done by at least 28 people. And this is going to provide some time for them to be able to make adjustments to try to stay on schedule as much as is possible. I am looking forward to a group in January that'll be put together to try to come up with something for next year. Hopefully
we're able to hire some additional people, because that's, from my seat, that's the real solution. We've got too few people trying to do the work of a larger number, and the solution is going to be get more people.
Yeah, and I just also want to make it clear. I mean, the goal is to reduce some of the delays. At this point, we can't guarantee anything. Every day, it's a kind of a, you never know who's going to be showing up right now. So I just really appreciate the fact that amongst all of that, they've been able to come up with this plan that is really, in my mind, a very minimal adjustment that hopefully can make a positive impact on our drivers, students, families, everybody, district. So, no other comments? Roll call, please.
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Ms. Devine?
Yes, motion carries. And now I would accept a motion to approve the online learning days resolution.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Smith,
Second.
second by Ms. Savage. Any comments about this?
I think I sent an update to all of you. Unfortunately, some budget bill changes hit after the school year started, and one of those took away the ability to be able to do blizzard bags. And if you were a blended school, you couldn't do the online learning. So they kind of coupled a couple changes right on top of each other. So in essence, this would allow us to be able to offer online learning days on days that we may have emergency closings. So we have consensus from sign off from the union leadership as well. So we would need your approval to do so.
Any questions or comments? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
Ms. Devine?
Yes, motion carried. Now I would accept a motion to approve the treasurer CFO action items.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Keck,
Second.
second by Ms. Savage. Any comments, Todd?
Just a couple minor things I'd point out. One, you'll see on there a PNC procurement card rebate of $9,800. That's just to meet an audit requirement that I inform the board annually of that. So in essence, just like at home with your own personal credit card, you get points. We do the same thing with the school credit card. We spend a little bit more money than you do at home probably, so that number is a little bigger. And then also point out a generous donation from Coleman Power Sports for the FFA program.
Right. And that with that PNC rebate, those monies just go into the general operating fund?
Correct.
Okay.
They go into the other revenue line.
Okay, great. Yeah, and thank you for that donation, for that, from that Power Sports. That's very generous. Any questions, comments for Todd? Roll call, please.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Devine?
Yes, motion carries. I would now accept a motion to approve the superintendent HR and volunteer items.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Ferguson,
Second.
second by Ms. Savage.
I don't think there's anything riveting in that section. We have supplementals. We adjusted kind of that supplemental framework to show the alignment between our negotiated agreement and the level of which the coach is paid. So it might look a little different to you this month. Volunteers and hires and some adjustments and steps that people have brought forward their paperwork to justify an increase.
Okay. Great. Any questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Devine?
Yes, motion carries. I would now accept a motion to approve the superintendent other action items.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Ferguson,
Second.
second by Mr. Smith. Questions or comments about this?
I appreciate our staff helping to offer students an opportunity to travel and see other countries. That's a great experience.
Yep. Okay. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
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 Yes, motion carries. Comments and questions from board members. Mr. Smith.
Yeah, I wanted to point out one thing. Tammy Cooper sent us I got to find it here, the STEM Solutions Day, and there are a number of different businesses and organizations, the city of Marysville and so forth, that will present to our student body some problems and ask them to try and come up with some suggestions as to solutions. And that is a fantastic opportunity for the kids. It's real world. It incorporates just so many different things in the process, and it is, I think, one of the highlights of the school year. I want to thank everybody that was involved in getting this room ready for tonight. It's nice to have a home, and hopefully for those that come to the meetings, it allows you to understand and hear what we're doing and enjoy the meeting. So, and that's it for me.
Thank you. Mr. Keck.
I have none.
Thank you. Ms. Savage.
Congratulations to the students that won the awards that we recognized this evening. It's wonderful to achieve academically, and I appreciate everyone being awarded those great certificates. Thank you to Kim Jude for the special education presentation. I thought that was very informative. 1,100 students, $12 million a year. It's a big part of our educational system. I'm not sure the number, but 110 staff members roughly dedicated to special education within our district. So just that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ferguson.
Yes, I just want to congratulate. I got to see the girls cross country team make history, OCC champs. I think congratulate them. End of the night with, I guess Dick and I were at the same place with watching the marching band perform and get some trophies, some medals at Piqua. And soccer team last night, they won their first round. The girls soccer team, I should say, got their first round in the sectional tournament. So kudos to all of our student athletes that are out there keeping focus and still working hard to win. I want to shift again to November. There's something important for me, and it's the Union County Board of Developmental Disabilities is on the ballot, and they're asking it's just a renewal levy. And it's important, I think, for everyone to know and support them. There's no increase in taxes. They do early intervention for children from birth to 3. They preschool, which we talked about today, for children 3 to 5. Support services, which is case management for the population they serve, adult supports, and also the Special Olympics program is something that they manage. I reached out to the superintendent to just see how many students they serve, and 91% of the students they serve are Marysville students. And so that's very important. I think our missions are aligned, and I hope that everyone supports them this November. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Johnson. Nothing to add. Ms. Allen.
Nothing to add. Mine were all taken. So.
Okay. Yeah, I better make a comment about this room because, yeah, it's very exciting to finally be here. It's been a while, but the building is looking wonderful. I can't wait for the open house, for everybody to be able to see just what a benefit it's going to be for our district and community for a long time to come. So that's wonderful. Again, yeah, you've talked about Kim's presentation. I did want to mention October is Manufacturing Month. That's very important for our community, and I know that our Chamber of Commerce has a crafted in, well, I think it's our economic development, a crafted in Union County program. And they're creating a partnership between the Chamber and Columbus State to address the labor shortage in manufacturing. And so it's called MEP for Manufacturing Extension Partnership. And I believe they have plans to, do some things with our students to help promote the idea of going into manufacturing. And yeah, I'm very excited about that STEM Solutions. I think it's not only a benefit for our students, but many of the businesses that came last year made comments about how, they had some solutions presented by the students that they were going to be using. So it's a real win-win. I also noticed in the building notes that one of our staff members, Carrie Faust, is going to be presenting at a teacher's, some kind of a teacher seminar workshop or something, and it'd be wonderful if we could see that presentation sometime, as we want to, celebrate our staff and students who are really exhibiting that love of learning. So thanks again to Jermaine and Nan for updating our work plan, and congratulations to the students we recognize. I look forward to doing a lot more of that, and I would now accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Savage.
Second.
Second by Mr. Fergus. It's like you're all on, like you're, some Western here. Who's going to draw quickest? So we have a motion and a second. Can I have a roll call, please?
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Yes. Motion carries. We're adjourned at 8:46. Thank you.